From the moment Thomas walked into the antique shop that autumn afternoon, something in the heavy atmosphere of the place wrapped around him. The air was thick, laden with the scent of aged wood and dust, as if time itself had forgotten here. The shop was a labyrinth of forgotten objects, each shelf piled with furniture, books, and relics that no one wanted anymore. But among those stacks of old items, one thing stood out: a window with a dark, weathered frame, covered by a thick layer of dust. The glass, a deep, opaque shade, seemed more like a stain than a reflection, as if it hid something dark and impenetrable beyond its surface. The elderly woman who ran the shop approached him silently as he examined the window, almost as though she had materialized from thin air. She glanced at the window, and then, with an enigmatic smile, spoke in a low voice. "Don't touch the window. No matter how much you pay, the curse has already been cast." Thomas, not fully understanding the depth of her words, merely thinking she was just a typical shopkeeper, trying to add a little mystery to an old item. Laughing casually, he replied, "I'm just curious. What's so special about it?" But the woman didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the window with a vacant stare, as if she was seeing something far beyond Thomas. What he didn't know at that moment, but would soon understand, was that she had already witnessed what he didn't want to say: the fate of those who dared to look through the glass. That night, after paying for the seemingly useless item, Thomas took the window home. He lived in a small, isolated house on the hills, an old property he had recently bought to escape the bustle of the city. Solitude, to him, was a blessing, but also a silent prison. And in that house, a place of silence and shadows, he had no idea he had brought something far more dangerous with him. As he placed the window in his studio, Thomas didn't immediately notice the discomfort it brought with it. He was more interested in admiring it than understanding it. The window had a faintly opaque glow, as though sealed by an invisible mist. It was more than just a piece of old glass. It seemed, in some way, to know it was being watched. He installed it on the wall carefully, feeling a strange reluctance with each movement. When he finished, he stepped back to admire his work. But it was at that moment that the sense of unease began to grow within him. Something was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. He sat near the window and gazed at the glass, now noticing the distorted figures that seemed to move through it. They weren't clear images, but rather shapes that seemed to form and disappear in a vicious cycle. Curious, Thomas leaned closer, gently touching the glass. That's when something happened. A sharp vision cut through his mind. He saw a woman, or at least what appeared to be a woman. She was standing in a dark hallway, her eyes empty, her face twisted in an expression of horror. She looked directly at him, as if she knew he was watching. Thomas recoiled, startled, slapping his hand against the glass, but the image remained vivid in his mind, like a fragment of a nightmare that refused to vanish. That night, Thomas had trouble sleeping. He tossed and turned in his bed, the image of the woman still haunting him, her vacant, pleading gaze as if begging to be freed. He tried to forget, but he knew, deep down, that something was about to happen. This wasn't just an object. This wasn't a simple window. There was something more, something he couldn't understand. The following day passed like any other, but something had changed. When Thomas went to work, he was a writer, and his studio was in a separate room of the house. He noticed something curious. The window was darker, not physically, but in the sense of its presence. It seemed more opaque, heavier, as if the glass was absorbing something he couldn't see. He avoided looking directly at it, but each time he passed the room, a chill ran down his spine. In the days that followed, the visions began to happen more frequently. Sometimes he saw the woman in his mind, but at other times she appeared right before him, watching him as though she were part of the very reality. And it wasn't just her. Each time Thomas looked through the window, new figures began to emerge, their forms distorted and twisted, their faces filled with expressions of fear and suffering. Each figure seemed closer, more real, and with every glance, Thomas felt more connected to those lost souls. But what he didn't know, what he still didn't understand, was that these visions weren't just fragments of another world. They were pieces of something much more sinister. Something that was slowly beginning to crawl into his reality. He began to lose track of the boundaries between what was real and what wasn't. At night, the sounds coming from the window, whispers, muffled screams, creaks, were so loud that he could hardly sleep. It was as if the house itself was alive, as if every wall was breathing, waiting for something. Thomas tried to destroy the window. In a moment of desperation, he grabbed a hammer and began pounding on the glass, but it wouldn't break. It seemed solid, impenetrable. He then tried throwing it into the fireplace, but once again, the window resisted. The fire couldn't touch it, as if it was protected by some invisible force. And with each attempt to destroy the cursed object, more figures began to appear through the glass. Now, he saw familiar faces, old friends, deceased relatives, Père L'Obed, all staring at him with a look of condemnation. And then, one night, when Thomas' desperation had surpassed any limit, he finally understood what the window really was and what it wanted from him. It wasn't just a window showing what was beyond it. It was a portal, a passage to the other side, and those who looked through it, whether they were ready or not, would be trapped forever in whatever it revealed. In the end, he had nowhere left to run. When the last figure appeared, a man with an empty, deathly gaze, Thomas knew he couldn't escape. Ayad Loked, and the curse was complete. The window's glass finally shattered that night, but not into pieces. It dissolved into a fine mist, as if it absorbed everything that was real. And when the last fragment disintegrated, Thomas was no longer there. His mind, his soul, his life, all consumed by the curse of the last glimpse. And the window, now ownerless, patiently awaited its next victim. And now, you may be wondering, has the curse of the window been broken? Or Abatomus Si simply become another part of the terrifying collection of souls that haunt the blackened window, waiting for its next victim? If you think Thomas's story is the end, think again. What we've seen, what we've felt, is not always the complete truth. Who knows what else is hidden in his house, waiting for the one who dares to look. If you enjoyed this tale and want to uncover more of what hides in the shadows, subscribe to the Haunted Minute channel, where stories like this appear every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications and get ready for more mysteries and terrors. Who knows what you might find when you look beyond the window? We'll see you in the next video.